It's one of those questions Star Wars fans love and hate the most. Which Star Wars movie is your favorite? Now for some, this seemingly innocent question is a quick answer off the top of their head, but for others, it's a path down a mental rabbit hole. Ask enough Star Wars fans and you'll probably hear every film named at least once. That's because some grew up with the prequels and love the action of the pod racing scene, whereas others are still enraptured by the original magic of A New Hope. But no matter which film tops the list for Star Wars fans, there's one thing we can all agree on, and that's that everyone loves Empire. Just like they did 3 years ago with the 40th anniversary of A New Hope, Del Rey has released a collection of short stories celebrating the 40th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. And these stories take place from the perspective of 40 different characters, many of which may have slipped past your radar on your first or even your 10th watch of the movie. From a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back features 40 of the best authors out there, both authors who have written Star Wars stories before and those who haven't. It's a collection of tales from those who love the movies just as much as we do. And so whether it's a new face or a familiar face, this is a collection of 40 different passionate tales about Empire Strikes Back, from the battle on Hoth all the way up to the escape from Bespin. It's truly an example of the variety and vastness of storytelling that's possible in a galaxy far, far away. Hi everyone, I'm Nathan Emery, content creator here at Youtini. Our expert review team has gone through From a Certain Point of View Empire Strikes Back to give it their scores for each section, as well as their thoughts on things like plot, originality, and characters. So I'm here to take you through each section and give you what our review team thought of each of those categories. In terms of plot, From a Certain Point of View generally follows the plot structure of the film. So it's pretty familiar and it'll hit the same story beats in the film, although of course it'll add its own color along the way. So some of the stories will feature familiar characters and faces, like for example Rogue 2, which features Rogue Squadron, but others will actually feature completely new characters, such as standard Imperial procedure. So as you go along, you get this kind of nice mix of familiarity from the film, but also newness from these new characters and new story points that are introduced. So while we were reading through From a Certain Point of View, we really found that the stories with original characters shined even more than those with characters we're already familiar with. It's something we've talked about in past Star Wars reviews, such as Thrawn Ascendancy Chaos Rising, that originality breeds some of the best writing in Star Wars, and this is really no different. When authors are given less constraints of characters and of plot points we already know, they're able to take that farther and really write something that they're passionate about, and that's creative. And we found that to be true with the plot of From a Certain Point of View. And that idea really encapsulates the strength of From a Certain Point of View's plot. I mean, with this unique storytelling method, 40 different stories from 40 different authors, its strength in its plot really comes from its ability to add on to the original movie, to show us new perspectives and give us a new angle into the things we're already familiar with from the movie. We get to see things like the history of Bossk before he was contacted by Darth Vader, and the history of the Exogorth species before it ate the Millennium Falcon. The first From a Certain Point of View was lauded for its ability to take the events of A New Hope and add a fresh perspective onto them. And after turning through the pages of the Empire Strikes Back version, we can confidently say that this book achieves the same. In fact, we'd even go as far as to say it outshines its predecessor, much like, as some of us think anyway, the film did with A New Hope. And so this dichotomy between the plot of the original film with new added characters and stories is why our review team gave the plot of this book a 7.8 out of 10. So when this book was first announced, Del Rey was very transparent about the insanity of the character selection process. Evidently, a giant Google Doc was created with all of the different characters' stories that would be told, and then authors pounced to try to write their reasons for why they should be selected for their favorite character. And so of course, reading the final version of this novel, we can see which character pairings proved to be the most successful. And there's not exactly a golden rule. We mentioned before that we tended to enjoy stories from original characters more than pre-existing characters, but that's not always the case. I mean, we really enjoyed getting the look into Admiral Ozzel's background, for example, even though he's already a familiar face to us from the movie. So of course, the characters in this book are the bridge between us, the reader, and this rich existence, this rich world created in Empire Strikes Back. And so whether it was a pre-existing character or one completely new, we found that the stories that focused most on a singular character were the most effective. For example, A Good Kiss tells us the story of a man we've never met before trying to escape from Hoth while also facing the pressures of life and of a crush. On the other hand, The Truest Duty takes us into the mind of General Veers as he ponders the upcoming assault and the impact it will have on his legacy and his career. So if we listed out every story that goes into the mind of a single character in this book, this review would be really long. But just trust us when we say that the singular character stories are some of the best writing in this book, and really some of them are up there with the best in canon. These stories allow us to see the moment-to-moment decisions inside characters' minds in Empire Strikes Back. Again, giving that nice mix of familiarity with the world and with the movie itself, while also bringing this rich new perspective. So again, characters are really what helps, from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back stand out. Again, we're already familiar with this universe, but giving an inside look into these new characters, or these characters that we're not very familiar with yet, really adds a rich new perspective. So the introduction of so many new characters and the expansion of the backstories of so many characters that appear in the movie is why our review team gave characters a 9.0 out of 10 for this book. Now moving on to writing. And what a lineup this author list is. From a certain point of view encapsulates the perspectives of 40 different writers, all of which are beautifully captured on the cover. And it's such a diverse list. This diversity of authors really translates into diversity of stories and of writing style as well. So the writing styles in this book are hard to characterize because there's so many. As you go from story to story, you'll experience vast shifts in tone, intent, even some poetry. And because of these different styles, it's unlikely that everyone who reads this book is going to enjoy every single story in it. But that's really the beauty of it. I mean, this book represents what we think is going to be the future of Star Wars publishing, where it's not just a single straight line through the universe, but it's books that branch off into different parts of the galaxy, different timelines, different perspectives, and there's always going to be categories that some fans enjoy more than others. And it's ultimately going to be up to personal preference and personal perspectives. Tracy Deonn's psychological description of the mentality of Dagobah belongs in Star Wars. Cavan Scott's unabashed love of Jaxxon belongs in Star Wars. Daniel Jose Older's hilarious inside jokes about the reality of Star Wars publishing belongs in Star Wars. Each member of the review team had a different story that was their favorite and a different one that they didn't like so much. Some people really loved one while others didn't like another one so much. But that's really the beauty of it. There are going to be stories that are a little bit of a slog to get through, but then there are going to be stories that really resonate with you and your personal story. There are going to be authors you've never heard of before that now you want to go check out everything they've written. And there's going to be familiar authors who kind of let you down a little bit with their stories. And so that's another added benefit of this huge collection of stories. I mean, there's going to be authors you've read before, authors you haven't, and what better way to dive deeper into an author and their previously published stories than reading a short story in Star Wars about that author and falling in love with it. And so such a diverse set of writing styles means that not everyone will love every single story, which we found to be the case. But overall, we found the writing of this book to be really solid, and we give it an 8.5 out of 10. And now, moving on to originality. Again, it's a little hard to characterize the originality of this book. Of course, it takes place within this universe that's already created by the Empire Strikes Back film, with which we're all familiar. But on the other hand, it adds so many new characters and new plot points and new perspectives that it really feels very original at a lot of points. So without spoiling too much, you'll learn about the history of Rogue Squadron's call signs, you'll learn about an Imperial waste manager, you'll learn about the Exogorth species. So these are all worlds and situations we're familiar with from the film, but we would never have thought to look into the backstory of. And really, a collection of short stories like this is one of the only places you can explore that. I mean, sure, we love the original novels like, again, Thrawn Ascendancy, Chaos Rising that create this beautiful world, these beautiful new characters, but there's also a level of originality created when you just add on to things we're already familiar with. And additionally, this collection of short stories really pushes forward the LGBTQ plus representation in the Star Wars universe. Now, of course, the original films weren't quite as inclusive or diverse as we would have liked, but these stories show that there are a number of queer characters that were already there in the movies. It allows people who identify with the LGBTQ plus community to write stories that they identify with. And that's a beautiful thing to see and a beautiful leap forward for the Star Wars publishing community as a whole. And so while this book may not add huge additions to the world of canon like so many recent novels that we've become familiar with, it adds so many little details and little characters that you'll fall in love with that the originality of this book really does stand up with those other canon novels, albeit in a very different way.
And the fine line between the fact that this book is based on a movie that is already very familiar to us while also adding so many new details and scenes is why our review team gave the originality of this book an 8.5 out of 10.
And now on to entertainment. Remember the joy of watching Empire Strikes Back from the first time? Or if you don't remember that, maybe you remember the joy of watching it from the 40th time. Now imagine that joy across 40 different authors with 40 different stories across 600 pages of Star Wars. Now that is a lot of entertainment value. And as you read through From a Certain Point of View Empire Strikes Back, it's really clear that these are authors who are passionate about Star Wars and passionate about the Star Wars characters they get to write. And that passion really translates to the entertainment value as we're reading it and we feel that love. Some take us through exciting space battles, some take us through new love and clandestine meetings, and others can't get enough of the smugglers that inhabit every part of the galaxy. Each story feels so personal that it's easy not only to be entertained by the content of the story itself, but imagining this author who picked this character crafting this wonderful story. And so as a whole, From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back really takes the originality of the original film while also adding some of the best new trends in Star Wars publishing. It's a book that feels diverse, it's got a range of emotional spectrums, but as a whole, each story feels complete.
And so in terms of entertainment, like we've said for some of the other sections, a lot of the stories will appeal to most readers, but there are definitely going to be some that just aren't that reader's personal favorite. And so because we enjoyed most of the stories of this book and everyone just had different favorites and different ones that they liked, we gave the entertainment of this book an 8.5 out of 10.
And finally, we're going to move on to the audio category. So the original From a Certain Point of View on Empire Strikes Back actually ranks at the top of our best audiobooks list, and that's for a good reason. When you have this diversity of stories and authors, you also have a diversity of narrators, and again, that brings out some of the best in Star Wars narrators. We've got a host of great narrators from well-known names in the Star Wars publishing universe like Jonathan Davis, Mark Thompson, and Emily Wu Zeller, to new names that you'll get to know for the first time. Whether it's embodying the soul of an ancient Jedi Master, personifying the thoughts of a space slug, or narrating this burgeoning romance within the depths of Echo Base, each narrator is really chosen for that specific story. Just as the authors who write them, you feel the passion of each narrator as they narrate this story. And as with the first one, credit must be given to Penguin Random House Audio for this. They were tasked with compiling, editing, and producing 40 different stories from 40 different backgrounds with 40 different sets of sound effects, narrations, emotions. It's really an incredible effort. And to think that all of this happened in the middle of a pandemic as well is truly mind-blowing. So even if you pick up the print version of this book, you might want to check out the audio one as well. And speaking of the audiobook version of From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back, you can get it completely free on us. That's right, if you sign up for Audible using the link in the description below, or you head on over to youtini.com/audible and sign up for an Audible free trial, your first book is completely free with no strings attached. And unless there's a Star Wars audiobook that you've really been hankering to pick up, there's really no better way to use it than From a Certain Point of View, Empire Strikes Back. I mean, you just heard me rave about all the great narrators that are here, and this is the perfect opportunity to pick it up, especially if you've been hesitant to jump into the world of Star Wars audiobooks before. So to wrap up this review, From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back takes the expansiveness of the original from a certain point of view and adds on it by increasing the diversity of the authors and stories, really taking what the original already excelled at and pushing it to new heights. And again, while not every story is going to thrill every reader, there's definitely something in here to entertain every Star Wars fan, whether you're a newcomer to Empire and you've only recently watched it for the first time, or whether you were in line to watch it and see what happened next in the tale of Luke Skywalker back in 1980.
From a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back had a monumental task to take this film that's beloved by millions of people across the world, that's familiar to so many, and to add a new twist to it, to do the original film justice while going above and beyond with the characters and scenarios that are in the movie. And the review team at Youtini felt that the book largely succeeded in this goal, and that's why we gave it an 8.5 out of 10 as our overall score.
If this book is any indication for the future of Star Wars publishing, there's a lot to be excited about. The 40 different authors who come together to craft this amazing tale, who take a film that's so beloved by Star Wars fans and add on to it and really do it justice, is incredible. And we can only hope that in 3 years' time, we'll get something similarly incredible, or perhaps even better, to celebrate Return of the Jedi. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but the Youtini review team is really excited about, from a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back. And if you're as excited as we are to get your hands on this book and you want to discuss it with friends who are just as passionate about it as you are, be sure to head on over to our vibrant and positive Discord community over at youtini.com/discord. And if you're looking to pick up a physical copy of From a Certain Point of View, be sure to use the link down in our description below so we can keep bringing you great content like this. And with that, may the Force